Hi, wonderful people. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the proximate and ultimate analyses that are described at the beginning of Chapter 3. There are two kinds of questions that ethologists can ask when they are designing their studies for animal behavior. They can ask if their research question is really a proximate analysis. What can they learn about what's going on in the here and now within that organism's lifespan, the physical, mechanical, or developmental changes that are taking place during the time that this behavior is exhibited, or ultimate explanations like overall multi-generational effects that occur within that organism. To break it down a little bit further, examples of proximate methods would include analyzing the genes that underpin a certain behavior, sensory motor systems, what's going on in the physiology of the organism during the time that that behavior is taking place. Ultimate causes might be looking at what has gone on in the history of the species, what are the evolutionary changes that are taking place, and what are the processes that are acting on that organism to manifest different kinds of behavior. So is there a natural selection or artificial selection process that's acting on that organism to change the behavior? Each animal behaviorist doesn't just use one of those kinds of questions. They may use two in the same study. They may use ultimate kinds of research questions in one study and proximate in the next. One is not better than the other. We just think of things from those different perspectives based on the research questions that we want to answer at that time. Let me give you an example. These are house finches. Notice that there are two different colors in the picture there. Typically, the male house finches are more brightly colored, while females are more drab. You can think about a lot of reasons for that, and we'll get into that in a minute. But if you're asking something like, what causes this, you're asking a proximate question. It may be genes that you're looking at, something with the animal's physiology, maybe their diet. If you ask why those differences persist over time, such as why are the males more brightly colored and the females more drab in color over the last 100 years, you're talking about an ultimate question or something that persists in a multi-generational context. In controlled feeding experiments where researchers will selectively control what each organism is eating, we find that males are more brightly colored, and that has to do with their diet. They will consume more carotenoids. Carotenoids are found in many different foods and will result in changes of color for a lot of different birds. For example, flamingos are pink because of the carotenoids that they eat in their diet. Fish can eat carotenoids that are found in plants and become more brightly colored, for example. But in this particular study that I'm referencing, two groups of females are fed finch food. One of them is given food with a red pigment coming from carotenoids, and one of them is given just regular food that has a poverty of carotenoids, which is the control group. And so in one group we've manipulated the food to contain the carotenoid, and in one group we haven't manipulated it. That's our control group. And those in the red pigment group will become more brightly colored than those in the control group. So we can deduce that it's likely that these carotenoids are influencing the development of the bright colored plumage in these animals. This is a proximate explanation, but let me take this a little bit further. The finches are colored differently in Michigan, Hawaii, and New York, and that has to do with their access to carotenoid-based foods. If they live in an area where there are more carotenoids naturally existing in the environment, we find that overall their plumage is brighter. But we should hold it in our mind that males and females do forage differentially. Males will seek out more carotenoids than females, and females will eat them if they're there, but they don't search for them. The males that are more brightly colored will mate more with females, and they're more attractive to females. So remember how natural selection works. This isn't a male finch that's going to run around and say, I want to be sexy to the females, so I'm going to seek out more carotenoids, and then I'll be able to get more matings. It's not a decision that the birds make related to their mating. In contrast, the males that naturally sought out carotenoids were likely to have more bright plumage, and then they have more mating, so they proliferate more, and their genes are more available in the gene pool. For an ultimate question, we might ask something like, why would males of this species overall search this food out? And that is when we start to consider how they get positive attention for being more brightly colored and how females are more attracted to that. If you look down here at table 3.1, this is manipulating plumage. So you have on the left side with the numbers, the brightened plumage, in the middle, the sham control. Sham just means nothing happened. And then lightened on the right side, so we're actually swinging them back in the other direction and making them more light. So we can see what takes place with their scores. So the males in the brighter condition will score more high than the sham, and the shams will score more highly than those that have been lightened. So this is a really nice relationship that we're building here. Why would females prefer males with brighter colors? Well, there are a lot of explanations for this, and we can talk about those at a later time, but there are some functions that it might serve, which are listed below. So brightly colored males actually have less pathogens. Birds have a lot of parasites, actually, and the brightness of their feathers can be indicative of their parasite load. Birds that have been overloaded with parasites will be more drab in color and have issues with their feathers and stuff. So the brightly colored males have less pathogens, and then when they encounter pathogens in nature or experimentally, for example, when they're injected with pathogens, they can get rid of them quicker. So that would be helpful for females to be with the male that had those characteristics if they're going to be having progeny. Brightly colored males also feed young more often. One of the things that I had discussed in a previous lecture was that females will remember the males that they have the most babies with and the males that exhibit the most parental care. So this would be something that the males would be selected for. The brightly colored males are better foragers, and they produce bright male offspring because diet is a mediator there. So these finch studies are an example of proximate and ultimate analyses and questions in the field of ethology.